Hi, this has been Proko with TriFit XT. I've had some requests from a few athletes if I was going to do another bike course talk, and I wasn't really going to do it this year, just being a flatter course, but I did realize, there is wind out here, and that can really change your game plan going into the race. So I want to kind of go through some of the things I do. And these views are just kind of, I'm trying to be a little bit more general and give ideas there. I do have coached athletes that I give much more specific information tailored to them for, but I'm going to go over as much as I can to hopefully help you out there. All right, a little bit more about me. I'm a USAT Level 2 triathlon coach. I got my coaching certification in 2007, and I got my Level 2 certification in 2011. I've raced Lubbock 16 times. Also came out here last year when they canceled the race just because I already booked a hotel and did the old school course with the 8 hills on the bike and 3 hills on the run, and that really kicked my butt. It took me 4 times out here to just get under 7 hours. In fact, the first year I was the last official finisher. The cutoff time was 8 hours, and I finished 7 hours, 59 minutes, 20 seconds. And in the last 4 times here, I've been able to get under 5 hours. I don't think that's going to happen this year. I just have not been able to train at all for the race. I'm barely in sprint triathlon shape, let alone anything a half Ironman. But we'll see what happens here on Sunday. So I got a little treat for you here. I pulled up my pictures from the last time I was here in Lubbock and the first time I was here in Lubbock on the bike, and I want to see if you notice any small differences in these photos. So here we are. This was in 2001 here. I borrowed a helmet from my girlfriend at the time, and then it wasn't until like years later I looked and I was like, dude, I didn't even have any water on the bike. Like, how did I even live out there? And this was the shifters were down tube here, 7 speeds in the back. I don't know. I was in way over my head on this whole thing, and and then it's morphed into what the position is today, and you're talking about like close to an 8-hour time versus around a 5-hour time. Can't really say I was much better of an athlete now. I'm a much better endurance athlete now. Back then, I was playing a whole bunch of like, flag football and other kind of fast twitch sports, and doing something long. I mean, literally, it felt like an Ironman to me back then. So I just figured I'd share that here. And this photo is courtesy of Scott Flathouse, always taking great shots anywhere and anytime. All right, so this course, wind is probably the biggest thing with this course. That, yeah, it probably will be windy, but the direction of that wind is very, can really affect this bike course. I threw into some bike calculators, and actually it's looking like it's going to be very favorable. If we get a wind coming out of the east, as opposed to normally it's from the south. But if we get an east wind, because this is a point-to-point bike where you're starting here and finishing mostly to the west and a little bit north, anything that's pushing you this direction is going to give you a longer tailwind, and in turn giving you a faster bike split. So with an east wind, this could be a crazy fast course. Now if we get the normal south wind, something that, and you can apply this to any wind direction. And I kind of like this course that it's not something like Galveston where it's just straight one direction. There's a few turns. And on these turns, like, let's just assume a south wind. You'll want to be staying in arrow position with a crosswind, and definitely really staying there with a headwind. But let's say we have that south wind. Now you have this, looks like, there's 10, there's 15, so maybe 3 miles here. You're going to have a tailwind. If you need to get out of arrow, take some nutrition, this would be a good time to do it before you get to mile 15. So right in this area, this would be a good time. Sit up. Let's say we have a 15-mile-an-hour south wind. Sit up while going this direction. Get into nutrition. And then, get back into arrow here. And then, again, if you're going this direction, put that in nutrition. Now, again, that could, let's say we have a north wind. Well, now it's flipped around where this would be the side you'd want to take nutrition. Let's say we have that east wind that's coming from this direction. That's where you'd really want to make sure you're staying in aero while going into the wind, and the great thing is that's going to blow you back. So another thing about aero, yes, being in aero, the aero position is going to be the best bet for you to get the fastest bike split, but some people have not practiced being able to stay there for the time that for the full 56 miles, whether that takes you 2.5 hours or 3.5 hours. One of the things I noticed the last time we were out here is tons of people, and actually that time we had I think a little bit of a west wind, so a headwind. I saw tons of people on this stretch and this stretch here out of the aero position just for long periods of time, and that was when we were going straight into a headwind. It wasn't a strong headwind, but we were going into a headwind. So if you can't make that full time in aero position, take those breaks where you can. I haven't been biking enough to know that I can stay in the aero position for the duration of this, so I'm going to be looking for those spots to sit up a little bit and just make sure I can stretch out a little bit, especially since there's no climbs on here to kind of have a reason to sit up in the saddle. So I remember, and everyone has their own opinion about this guy, but I remember when Lance Armstrong did Galveston, he said it was like the most terrible feeling and difficult because of that course being so flat. And granted, he's only there for 2 hours, but he said it's the longest time trial he's ever had to go and hold aero for that long. And he said it jacked with just being in that position for that long, and then even his nutrition. I mean, just think about it. If you have a pretty aggressive aero position, being there and taking in a lot of nutrition, I mean, go ahead and eat a meal and lay on your stomach on your bed, and you'll see it doesn't digest the same way as when you sit up. So these are all things just keep in mind, and wind and aero are two of the main things here. And I'll look at the weather like right before the race to see which direction that wind's coming, so I can just mentally prepare me like, oh, I can take a break around here if it's coming from from the south or whatever, but just mentally being prepared for that, especially taking in like my nutrition. Be like, oh, I need to pull that bottle out that's tough to get out, or I need to undo that gel, or whatever you need to do. This is a good spot to do it with a south wind. And then same thing once you make that turn or here. These are all three great spots. Wheel selection. Again, to each their own, and probably you've already made the choice. I rock a 90 in the front with a disc in the back, and if I were to downgrade my wheel choice, meaning like, hey, it's really windy, I'm kind of a little bit worried, the first thing I would do is I'd downgrade the front wheel to a 60. I've never felt an issue with a disc wheel, and honestly, the windier it is, the more beneficial a disc wheel is. My wife, who only weighs 120 pounds, doesn't, she did this course back in the day when she liked to race a little bit more. I made her go ride with her disc wheel on a very windy day, going down one of the canyons with a regular front wheel. And she was like, yeah, you really can't even notice the disc that much. It's that front wheel when you put that on. So that's my 2 cents on wheels. Not that it's going to, probably change anyone's opinion at this point, but it's just something to know. I mean, I used to rock the head 3 up front and in the back. And then it was like, now I look back and I'm like, man, that was dumb. I should have, and I did get a disc after that, and I never went back to using that rear head 3 again, just because I noticed it made zero difference on the handling. So, again, that's my 2 cents on the wheels. But the big thing with this is wind and wind direction, and then managing that aero. Some of you can hold aero the whole time. That's great. Some of you got to be real with yourselves, and especially if you haven't swam the brick that I think no one does. Everyone does a brick where they do a bike and a run. A brick means combining 2 workouts, putting them back to back. Very few practice the swim to bike brick. And a lot of you, if you get that tightness, if 1.2 miles has you a little fatigued in the arms and you haven't hopped on your bike and tried to get in aero position right after that, it can be a little bit of a surprise. So again, it's probably too late at this point to really train that, but just keep that in mind. If you've struggled getting 56 miles an arrow the whole time, kind of think about using those arrow breaks of sitting up and either getting a nutrition or just enjoying that tailwind. Power plan. This is just a basic power plan. You can see with this, I think this is based on the conditions right now that I pulled up just today, and where it has the headwind going out, tailwind going back. The blue is the power. You can see there's just a slight increase on the power heading out, and then you'd get to decrease it on your way back, but then you'll notice the speed quite a bit faster going back in. Again, these are based off my aerodynamic numbers, throwing in 200 watts and then seeing what time it gives me there. I pulled up some other for other races for reference, other races out here that were also at 200 watts. These are the Lubbock 70.3 course, but with just a couple hills, Buffalo Springs 2016, and then Buffalo Springs 2014. And you can't really go by the distance because that, for some reason, changes a little bit every time. But if you notice the speed, all these were put at pretty much a normalized power of like 200 watts. You see the speed difference on these courses. The other course, remember, was 20. This is showing 24.6. This one from then 23.5, another 23.5, and then the old 8-hill course, and whatever the conditions were on this particular year, had it at 22.7. So that was a very difficult year. I don't know if that's actually 2014 or maybe just the course, but the data's from one of those times. So just to show you, there's quite a bit of difference in the course, and even depending on the wind. If we get a strong east wind, west wind, that'll make this course take a long time to finish because you'll be going into a very long headwind. Just my little 2 cents on the swim. With the swim starting here, the sunrise is somewhere over in this direction. So you're not going to have very long that you're going to be looking into the sun at all. So this is actually a pretty nice swim course as far as that goes. And then wetsuit. Again, this is kind of, have your numbers. Don't go by what everyone else is saying. I mean, you could look at it as recommendations. I've done non-sanctioned USA Triathlon, or not USA, or races that weren't sanctioned by USA Triathlon where there was no wetsuit rule. And I actually wore a wetsuit, a sleeveless wetsuit, in water temperature that was between 84 and 85 degrees. And it wasn't a short swim. It was actually a 10K swim followed by a 90-something mile bike. And I ended up being the first one out of the water, finished that swim in just a tad over 3 hours, and then still had a really strong bike. It was like an 8-hour day. Definitely felt a little bit warm towards the end of the swim, but that was 84, 85 degrees with a sleeveless wetsuit. Some people can overheat in that, just like different people have acclimated to different temperatures. Your personal wetsuit cutoff is going to be you. If 76 is too warm for you to wear a wetsuit, go with a swim skin. I was too lazy to pack my sleeveless wetsuit, so I only have a swim skin or a full wetsuit. But honestly, if it's under 80 degrees, if they measured at 76 and it's still 79 degrees somewhere, I still have no problem with a full wetsuit. I mean, it'll be a tad warm, but not too much for nothing that's really seemed to affect me in the past. But again, that's through practice, and I say it might not be something that helps you out this time, but maybe for some future races. All right, I have a few other videos that, if you haven't seen any of mine, one is training with power, and then another is how to climb. They're on my, the few subscribers I have, they're on my YouTube channel here, and it just tells you the benefits of, 1, using power, and 2, also how to approach climbing hills. This year it doesn't really have any hills, but if you ever end up doing a hilly course, it could be a beneficial video, and also show you the difference. I use Zwift to help show the time differences and how pacing it well can get the most out of your power. And on my Facebook page, TriFitXT, I'll probably post the weather like just the night before, the closest that shot you saw earlier, with wind direction. Let me just go back to it here. So this one here, I'll post that on my Facebook page just that night before, just see what the most current weather is. All right, I hope you enjoyed that, and looking forward to seeing everyone out there at the race. Good luck.